been a lot of fun.
Crazy
Sitting
stuff.
backstage and listening.
Funny, Tom was talking about those arena shows in
Yeah.
Hamilton, and getting to know you guys a little bit and hearing some stories. You never really think about where bands come from. I mean, even if you found a band these days, you're aware of them in the moment, in the present, as opposed to the early days, the early time. And
Right.
Rush evolved at a really interesting time in Canadian and Toronto musical history and cultural history, really. Played a lot of different venues, played anywhere you could really get a show. I think Tom sort of touched on that a little bit. One of your marks of distinction is you're really one of the only bands to ever play at the Mental Health Center in Queen Street. How do you get booked there?
That's true. We played there, it was probably 1970 or 71. The union would do these, arrange these gigs for union musicians that would be for free. They were like pro bono gigs. And we got a couple of these. One was at the Mental Health at 999 Queen Street West. And I remember that because my mom used to always say to me, "One day you're going to drive me to 999. And we got there, and we had all our equipment in the trunk of the car, and the van or the trailer that we pulled with it. We took the gear in, and some of the patients there helped with the gear, and it was like a scene from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, except they all had guitars and amps and drums. And they set up in a room up on the second or third floor. It was sort of a big open space. I don't know if they just cleared a ward or something. And we set up and we started playing out. We were young and loud, and this is a big square room with all glass. And they stood about 30 feet, away from the front of us, and they looked crazy. Eventually they started to dance, and
Nice.
and it was the most bizarre thing I've ever seen. Afterwards, we finished and had to go to the bathroom. And most of the crowd was there in the bathroom, and that was a really interesting conversation going on. Just the dialogue in the bathroom and the singing, but it was a very, very crazy gig. The union set up another gig for us at Warrendale, which was the same thing but for kids that were mentally disturbed, that would kill people and burn houses down.
It's a rough circuit.
Yeah, I know. There was something about the union. They didn't like us very much.
Apart from gigs at mental health centers, there was a whole array of really ragged clubs and venues in Toronto that you had to play because rock and roll wasn't legitimized really at that time.
True.
You mentioned earlier about a place, believe it or not, called the Meat Market. I can't imagine a club now like the Meat Market, Richmond Street, come on. But that was an actual place in the Colonnade, and I don't know where this ranks in terms of worst live experiences, but perhaps you can illuminate.
Well, it was, I don't know if some of you remember the Colonial Tavern. It was a really nice spot, but it was a jazz club.
Yonge Street?
Yeah, just across from the Eden Center. But they had another bar downstairs that had, no sign or anything. And we played there probably half a dozen times over the years. This one particular time, again, this was in the early 70s, I had my wisdom teeth pulled, and it was 3 hours, and they smashed my teeth up to get them out, and it was
dentist
horrible.
technology.
Yeah. And I was spitting out blood, and my mouth was all swollen, and I had these cotton pads in there, and I'd taken a bunch of Percocets. When they were really something. And so we went to the bar, and I did Percocets, and feeling a little better, and somebody said, you should probably smoke some hash. That would be good for you too. I thought, oh, okay, this is like medicinal hash. So, dental hash. It's very popular. And so I smoked some hash, like you do. And now I couldn't stand, and so I was in a chair on the stage, just like, one of those little chairs you had in school. Sitting on the chair, now think about Rush playing that kind of music Rush plays, sitting in a chair. It just doesn't really make sense. Because Geddy's jumping around, singing the way he does. But the meat market was notorious because it was a really, really rough downtown crowd. And every time we played there was at least 1 or 2 fights during the week that we played there. But this night, the place went berserk. Somebody said something, and there were chairs flying, and fists, and jugs of beer. Like, it was insane. And I'm sitting on the chair just playing.
You're feeling good, Alex?
I love rock and roll.
Phenomenal. And is that pre-touring days? You're pretty much locked here? Yeah.
Yeah, that was a couple of years before we started touring. Then we were playing high schools and bars all over the place. And like Tom, we were talking a little earlier and comparing notes on some of the places we played up in Smiths Falls and Thunder Bay and Sudbury and, all the hotels, the Queens hotels everywhere that had the fire escape was a rope nailed to the wall by the window of your room. So there's some history there.
Can you think of like worst overnight in a venue? Oh, like you staying in the club. So not even overnight, but you're right, because a lot of those clubs had the upstairs, right?
That's right.
Gig, and then you'd have to sleep.
Yeah, there was a bar that we played in a hotel in Smiths Falls, and they really, really hated us there. I remember it. We finished the first song, and there wasn't a sound, and then after the second song, it was like, "Fuck off! Get out of here!" and it stayed like that the whole night. They never really warmed up to us at all. And the rooms that we had, we were sharing rooms, and the walls. I had something on my mind. And the rooms were like, really awful, and the doors were all cracked and had holes in them and didn't close properly, and you didn't get nothing from staff. This happened a lot. We played in Thunder Bay at the Thunder Bay Motor Inn. We did 2 weeks there, and this was in late October, so it was cold. The owner put us in at the very end of the motel, where the rooms were probably 42 degrees Fahrenheit, and everything else, like the place was empty. But he stuck us down there. And we would play, and he'd come down and say, "Hey boys, want some drinks?" And he's like, "Yeah, that'd be awesome." He says, "Al's such a great guy, let's have some drinks." Then he wants something to eat. We had these meals, and so the end of the 2 weeks we went to get paid, and he gave us a list of everything that we drank and ate, and we left there with about $40 for 2 weeks.
Man,
Yeah.
it's a bad booking.
Yeah. Let's see, $40.
Used it wisely, clearly. So you're on the road eventually, and one's artistic life exists in stages. I know that the band it was a high water mark when you were able to tour in the Funcraft, the Dodge Funcraft.
Yes.
Why was that so appealing to you, and what were your adventures like in the Funcraft?
Well, it was bigger than a car. And driving in a car, 4 guys in a car, was really uncomfortable. And we drove for thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of miles in a car. And then we moved up to a station wagon. So it was like, oh my God, a station wagon. We'll never have to get anything beyond this. This is great. Because the luggage was in the back. So one of us got to sleep on the luggage, which gave a little more room in the back seat for somebody else. And we used to do shifts of 300 miles. And we roomed together in those days. Well, eventually we got the Funcraft, I think because the car rental company was going to sue us or something when we brought the car back. One car we brought back from the East Coast, and we forgot we had lobsters in the trunk. I'm telling you, that car reeked. And somehow, mysteriously, the rear view mirror got broken off, and the gummy sort of seal started being pulled, or not, I didn't say pulled, did I? It started to come off. Anyways, the car was really in a mess. So we told them that we were only going to use it for 600 or 700 miles locally. We brought it back with 11,000 miles. So it was time to get the Funcraft. And the Funcraft was just a van with a cap on it. Well, that was the last thing we were going to ever get, because now we could fit in there and, guys could sit in the back at a table and, do shots of tequila, and here we are, we're driving down the road.
Had a little kitchenette as well?
It had a kitchenette. I cooked tuna in there, like tuna salad.
Large tuna? Or?
Yeah, no, it's just a can. That got me on my cooking, but we had lots of pictures and stuff up on the walls there.
And you would have guests in the Funcraft as well?
We did. We had guests in there. Actually, Paul Stanley from Kiss came in one night. We were very excited because we just finished doing Corrosive Steel, our third album. And Corrosive Steel was the impetus for the Down the Tubes tour. So we were really excited and very proud, and we played it for Paul, and Paul just sat there like listening to it. And we were all sitting around going, looking at Paul, and this is not going so good. And he said, well, thanks guys, I'll see you, at the gig tomorrow. That was great, thanks a lot. And so we were crestfallen. But another time we were touring with Thin Lizzy, and Brian Robertson, the guitarist, Brian and I got along really, really well. And they were crazy, those guys. And we were really crazy when we were with them. But it was really a lot of fun. And Brian came in, and Brian liked to drink scotch. He was from Glasgow. So he would start drinking scotch around 6 in the morning and then go back to sleep at 7 and get up at 9 and start drinking again. And he was in the Funcraft this one time, and we were laughing and joking, and all of a sudden he threw up in the whole van. Like everything was covered in his vomit. The curtains, the table, the car seats. It was like he was running going, get me out of here, but too late. And then we had to drive overnight to Columbus, Ohio. Yeah, oh my God, that was horrible. Yeah.
It smelled better or worse than lobster?
Well, I don't know, that's debatable too, that's true.
And you would have drinking contests with those guys and stuff?
They weren't contests, we would just drink like crazy. But drinking contests, yeah, that was the in thing. We would teach Canadian drinking contests to other bands. Do you remember the band Angel?
Sure. Yes.
They wore the white, with the big feathery things on their shoulders. Sound check would start at 4:30 for us. They'd get there at 3:30 and start working on their makeup and hair. And they wouldn't do a sound check because they were busy with the blow dryers and doing their whole thing. And they were nice, fun guys, but we taught them how to play bop. Bop is one of those drinking games where it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, bop. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, bop. 15, 16, bop. So 7 and any multiple of 7, and then it changes direction. If you miss, you drink. I don't know, they didn't do well at math or something. And then after a while, after about 20 minutes, you're like, oh, come on, I drink anyways. But I remember some good times with them with that.
You guys, it seemed to me like in most cases, when you interacted, like Kiss loved having you guys on the road, and one of the reasons they loved having you on the road was because of a character that you created called The Bag. Simply The Bag. What did the bag look like? How did it evolve? What was its métier? What was the bag all about?
Well, the bag would appear every once in a while. The bag made maybe half a dozen appearances in all that time in a year. I think so. Bag, the timing had to be right for the bag. So the bag wore these blue sweatpants pulled up over the knees with the arms coming through and sticking out like this, and pulled up to about here, and then a dry cleaning bag from the room with the face, with the bag drawn on it. And then the bag would basically insult everybody in the room. And there was one time in particular that we were in Ace's room, because Ace was really a lot of fun. He
Like the bag?
He loved the bag. He loved it. He mentions the bag in his book, and he's got an actual picture of the bag in his book. So the bag's having a good time talking with Ace, and Getty was there, and I think Neil was there too, and we were having a good laugh. And then Gene showed up with a bunch of girls, and they came in, and well, you know, the bag started talking to them. And they were like, "You are so ignorant. You're take that." And one of them pulled the bag. Well, I say one of them pulled the bag off, and I mean that was such a no-no. The bag went berserk. Gene was looking at us like, "What are you guys nuts? What's the matter? You're freaking out at this girl. What's the matter with you? You guys are sick." He was so upset. You know, these are important property that I gotta take to my room right now. He was so upset. But the bag just got right back into it.
What did the bag What did the bag sound like? What was his persona?
Jeez, you know.
Kind of like Jinxie the cat, or something like that. You missus.
That sort of thing. Yeah, that was actually the bag's voice now that I think of it. Maybe that's why Ace loved him so much.
So you know, got along well with Kiss, and I know you toured with UFO, got along with those guys. You mentioned earlier that the Runaways were a band that you didn't quite jive with.
They opened for us a few times, and they were label mates. They were on Mercury Records, and I remember the first time we met them, we were at Chico and Charlie's, it's like a Mexican place that they did these sort of after-show parties. And they were there, and we took these pictures with them, and it's a record company thing. And you can see in this picture, you know, we're sitting like this, and they're sitting on the other side like this. So eventually we ended up doing some dates together, and you know, we always make a point of making sure the opening act gets a sound check, especially back in those days. And Max Webster was opening. This was in Detroit. The few times that we played with them, I do call it a sound check. They were just arguing about everything with each other. And this one particular time, because they cite this particular gig, Max, there was a problem, so there was no time for their sound check. Max set up, and then Max did like probably 2 minutes of a sound check, and they went berserk. We didn't get our sound check, and they get a sound check. So the story goes that we were at the side of the stage, and we were laughing at them, but I don't remember being on the stage. Why would I do that? I'd rather sit in my dressing room and smoke some pot or something like that, you know, if it was around. But,
Those rare occasions.
But I'm not, you know, I can't say what the crew was doing at the time, but they say, according to them, that they found our guitars in a dressing room and peed on our guitars. But the truth is, they peed on their own guitars.